And hello and welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and as always, thanks so much for being here. Well, I have a treat for you today. I hope you enjoyed the show. We're going to highlight Goodspeed musicals, and Dan McMahon, the Director of Marketing, is my guest today. And Dan, thanks so much for being here. Such a pleasure.
Always my pleasure to be here and to talk with you, Deborah.
And of course, we have said this before, this is your third time being here.
I know. How did that happen?
And I know that the audience will love to hear what has been happening with you and what has been happening with the Goodspeed as we move into 2023.
Yes.
And we'll talk about your calendar and so on and so forth.
Great.
Why don't we start with you, though? Let's refresh the memory as to your background. Tell us about yourself.
So I am currently Director of Marketing for Goodspeed Musicals. I'm originally from Chicago and worked in various different always marketing, but marketing in corporate life, and then transitioned into entertainment and eventually theater. Connecticut 21 years ago to work for Goodspeed and haven't looked back.
Did you think growing up that you might be in the theater arts? I mean, was that any thought of yours?
You know, I was in plays like in high school and then in community theater in college, but it was always fun and it was a dream. You know, who wouldn't want to be a Broadway or a film actor? But I knew I didn't have the talent for it. I had fun doing it. Unfortunately, I didn't know about other careers in the theater. I only knew that, you know, the people on the stage. And so through a long series of events, I ended up in theater, but I'm also very into educating others, you know, especially young people, that there are careers. I have 2 business degrees, but I work in theater. You can be a craftsperson in theater. You can do all kinds of things if you're interested in theater.
Marketing. You had a stint in marketing in corporate America before you found or got into the theater world.
Right.
What was it like for you to go from performing, if you will, into corporate America and then leaving it? I mean, was it a good transition?
Yes, it was. The last job I had in corporate, I worked for Brawny Paper Towels. And it was the most boring job I ever had. And I don't like a boring job, but it was all about analysis and spreadsheets and things. And I was like, oh God, you know. But a friend of mine ran 2 outdoor amphitheaters in Chicago that were concert venues and called and said, you know, why don't you come work with me and do marketing? And I thought, well, okay, I've got nothing to lose. Let's try it. So I did. And that they were owned by the Niederlander family, who own a bunch of theaters on Broadway and produce on Broadway. I thought, well, maybe I'll end up in theater this way. I did end up in theater that way, not with the Niederlander family, but in a different route.
Did you think, as you started to look at the theater world, that that's where you wanted to be?
Once I started learning more about it, yes, absolutely. And so the first theater I worked at in Chicago was a large performing arts center that we did dance and touring Broadway and all kinds of different things. But I learned after a couple of years that I really wanted to be where theater was being made and produced. And that's the regional theater. So Goodspeed is a regional theater. And so I started looking around the country for a place to do that and ended up calling Goodspeed home.
How did you find the Goodspeed, or how did the Goodspeed find you?
As I was doing my search, I knew the woman who I eventually replaced. I heard she was leaving. So I did a little research in the very pre-internet age and, you know, sent my information. And, you know, Michael Price, who was executive director at the time, called, asked me to come out, and I flew out for a half day and toured and met with him, and he offered me the job at the end of that interview, and I took it, and that was that.
Have you been director of marketing the whole time?
I have. The reason I've been able to last in that job that long is because it's ever changing. So my primary responsibilities are selling tickets. And so I'm in charge of marketing, PR, advertising, creating show art, those kinds of things. But over time, my job has expanded. I now am in charge of the box office and front of house, which is the usher and house management staff, and then concessions, so the bar and the gift shop. So, you know, I learn and manage all these different people, which is really rewarding. But I've also had other kind of side projects. So about 10 years ago, the general manager and I were put in charge of a new project to build actor housing. So together we built, with a whole committee and everything else, but we led an effort to build 17 new houses right in East Haddam on our campus, which was an amazing process. And then also, we toured two of our shows. So we did our Goodspeed show and then did a national tour of two of the shows. So I ran the marketing for those shows nationally and oversaw the PR for them. And so that was a new experience for me. So I'm always trying, doing something different and new too.
People will say, the Goodspeed Opera House, now it's Goodspeed Musicals, and then it's the Goodspeed. I don't understand all of the titles. What do they mean?
Sure, sorry you're confused. So Goodspeed Musicals is the nonprofit organization that operates the theaters and produces the musicals. The Goodspeed Opera House is the physical building. And over the years, we've kind of shorthanded it to just calling it the Goodspeed, because Opera House can sound pretentious. We don't do opera, and so we've kind of shortened it. But the Goodspeed and the Goodspeed Opera House are the same thing.
Speaking about the Opera House and its history, why don't we take a moment and tell the people what is the history of the building and the property?
Okay, in 1 minute or less, let's see if we can do this. The Goodspeed was built in 1876 by William Goodspeed, who was a shipping magnate, and he was running, part of his operations were running steamships from New York City up the Connecticut River. So he built that building, which it was and still is the tallest wooden structure on the Connecticut River, as a shipping terminal. So the lower levels were for passengers and freight and luggage and all that kind of thing. And on the main level, which is now the lobby level, was a general store. And above it were some offices, and then he put a little theater on top for traveling shows, vaudeville type of things. And over time, he passed away, and the theater came, less and less important, and the building started becoming in disrepair. So by the 1950s, the state owned it as a derelict building, and it was basically a garage for dump trucks. So the front doors that you see now were roll-top doors with dump trucks inside. But the building was in terrible shape and falling down, and the state was going to tear it down, but some people decided in the area to get together and save it. So they formed this nonprofit to save the building, restore the building, and begin operating it.
And how is business, or let's talk about the pandemic and COVID and where we are now. How did it get through that process, and how is it today?
It was awful. We were flying high. In 2019, we were having we had an incredible season. We were, turning into 2020, looking forward to doing some incredible shows, and everything was great. And then the pandemic hit. We shut down in March, and it was extremely rough because theaters and entertainment were one of the hardest hit, because we were about the first to close because we had large groups of people, and the last to open. We had to furlough or lay off the majority of our staff. We have about 70 year-round staff, and we ballooned up to like 300 in the season. But at that time, we had of the year-round staff, only about 8 or 9 of us were able to work. And for a long time, we only worked part-time. And eventually, we started, like in the summer of 21, we did some outdoor events in a tent to do something. Behind the scenes, we spent so much time refunding tickets and donating tickets and communicating and trying to keep in touch with people. And our members were amazing. We had about 6,000 members, and they kept supporting us. And and the government support that we got, the grants, were able to keep the place alive. And so this year, we reopened fully with a shorter season, because we didn't know last winter when we were planning if people would come back right away. So we planned a conservative season with shorter runs for the shows, and opened in the spring with cabaret, and it was a little slow to start and then picked right up and had full houses for the rest of the year. People came back and are supporting us, and I think having a good time.
How has the 3 shows done, Cabaret, Anne of Green Gables, and 42nd Street? If you look at 2022 coming out of that, how's the season been?
It's been incredible. First of all of the shows have been great shows. We've been very lucky to have great performers and actors and directors and creative teams, so we have really good shows, which is important. It's not always, every show is not perfect, but they all turned out well. And ticket sales have been beyond expectations. So we got to the point this summer with Anne of Green Gables where it was selling out. 42nd Street we just closed, and we hit 90% occupancy, which is amazing in good times. And now we're about to open A Christmas Show, which is a brand new musical.
And why don't we take a moment, if we can, show the pictures so that we can talk about the Christmas show. Okay? Let's talk about this. It's coming up right now.
Right, so Christmas in Connecticut is a world premiere musical, so no one has ever seen it, except for a few of us in the rehearsal room. It's playing now at the Goodspeed, and it's based on the 1945 Barbara Stanwyck movie about Christmas in Connecticut. So it's a holiday favorite, but not like Holiday Inn or White Christmas. It's a little bit less popular, which was intriguing to us and why it has been sitting around and no one's done it. But a group of creative authors got together, decided to write a musical and adapt it, and we're thrilled that they came to us, and together we've produced this show that's now playing, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great Christmas outing.
When do you open? When do you close?
It's running now, and we'll close December 30th.
Okay, so it runs through Christmas.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, great.
And the Opera House is all decked out for Christmas. It's a real Christmas experience when you come.
How about the next picture? Tell us what we're seeing.
This is the Opera House with our wreaths and garland up, and inside, all the wreaths and the stairs have garland and Christmas tree in the back. And so you feel like you're really having a nice Christmas time when you come.
And the next picture? There we go.
That's us not in Christmas time.
No, but
that's the building in its glory.
Yep, in its glory with the river, and you can sit out front at I'm seeing tables and chairs.
Oh, yeah.
Where do the buses pull in? I mean, you have groups
They drop
that come
off right in front. Yeah.
They do?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, coming off the swing bridge and then pulling in front of the building?
They pull over in front of the building, drop off, and then go into the parking lot.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, you can't really think sometimes that that location can handle
It's a little tricky, but
buses.
it can, yeah. And we have a lot of tour groups coming in buses.
Do you?
Yeah.
And you had mentioned in your last interview that they can come from around the nation.
Oh, they do. They do, and we have a group sales department that goes to trade shows in Maryland and Pennsylvania, New York. They come from all over.
Okay, why don't we hold that thought? I'm Deborah Gilbert. You are tuned into Arts and Entertainment. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Valley Shore Community Television is constantly adapting to the demands of our viewers. Busy schedules are making it hard for viewers to watch shows when they air.
Television has changed dramatically. We don't have to be appointment viewers or listeners anymore.
No.
We can do this in real time.
VSC TV has made it easy to watch all our locally produced content online and when you want it. Visit vsctv.com and click on the Watch Online tab to watch live, or visit our local show playlist to easily navigate your favorite shows anywhere, anytime, and on any device.
The way to this world is for free. Freedom from the ways of
VSC TV is your local Connecticut Mid-Shore Valley digital connection.
And welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and as always, thanks so much for being here. Well, Dan, let's put one more picture back up on the screen if we could. 60th anniversary Goodspeed musicals, what does that mean?
It's coming up. 2023 is our 60th anniversary. Obviously, that means we opened in 1963. So we're going to celebrate 60 years with a full season of classic musicals, brand new musicals, and everything in between.
Talk about 2023. We had just mentioned during the break. Let's talk about the calendar. What do you have coming up?
It's really going to be a great season. We're opening with Gypsy, which is a classic that we've never done before. And it was hard to get the rights because they were always tied up for Broadway. So finally we were able to do it, which will be a big classic show everyone's going to love. And then in the summer, we have a world premiere musical of the movie Summer Stock, which was a Gene Kelly, Judy Garland movie about, hey kids, let's put on a show in a barn kind of thing. So that's being adapted for the stage, so it'll be the very first time, and I think our audience will eat it up. And then in the fall, we have another new musical called The 12, which is a little bit different for us, and this musical is basically the story of what happened between the time that Jesus died on Good Friday and then Easter Sunday. So the 12 apostles and Mary Magdalene, what happened in that day and a half, the fear that these people had and how they came from, oh my gosh, our leader was just basically murdered, to what happened afterwards. And it's a story that's never been told.
Isn't that
so that's going to be fascinating. And it should appeal to everyone. It's not a religious story. It's meant to be, how does a group of people overcome this obstacle, and how does love challenge them and motivate them to change the world, really. So that's an interesting story. And then the last is going to be one of my personal favorites, Dreamgirls, which will be great on that stage, and it's a wonderful Motown-inspired story.
Before I forget, the website. What will the viewer find when they visit the website?
So it's goodspeed.org, and all of the show information is there, the current shows and what we know so far of the upcoming shows. And you can buy tickets there, and there's also a lot of background. You can research old shows, you can research, as we talked about, education programs and other things too.
Management has changed since you and I had talked last.
Yeah.
Tell us what has happened.
Sure. For most of our life, Goodspeed Musicals was run by one person as an executive director. I mean, most of the time it was Michael Price. But over the years, he and then his successor, Michael Gennaro, realized it needs to be a two-person model, which is typical in theater. So we've changed our leadership structure, so now we have an artistic director who is Donalyn Hilton, and a managing director who is David Bird. So Donalyn's responsibilities are all the art type of things, creative and picking the shows and producing the shows, and David is the management business side of things. And they've been with us now for 2 years. Donalyn's been here forever. She started as a stage manager. She was our line producer. She was then our full producer, and is now the artistic director. And David's a new blood coming in and helping us.
Tell us what it was like having a management change of going from one individual to two. How has it been having two bosses?
Well, and doing that during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting. You know, it was fine. We were prepared for it, and I think what is important is that the two of them work so well together, and their responsibilities are clear. So it's been a very smooth transition, and we haven't missed a beat.
For the actor or behind-the-scenes individual that's watching this show and very excited to hear your point of view, how do they get to present themselves to you? Do they audition? Do they send in paperwork? How do they let you know that they exist?
So actors audition, and we are an equity house, which means that we are a union house with Actors Equity. There are some non-union performers allowed in some situations. But basically, through Equity, there is a whole system for how you call for auditions and where they are. They're mainly in New York, although we do it in this area once a year. And they audition for us, and that's how it all works. So, and most of the actors know that process, so that's the best way to find us.
How about behind the scenes? The construction people, technical people, lighting
Please
people?
come. You know, the pandemic was very difficult for the entire theater industry, shutting down and losing our very talented staffs because they had to survive and take other jobs. So we're very interested and desperate for all kinds of talented people, carpenters, electricians, you know, and then costume makers, craft makers, all those kind of things we need. Any of our openings are always posted on goodspeed.org.
I saw 42nd Street. It was wonderful.
Oh, yes.
My mother's still raving about it.
Yeah.
One of the things about the pandemic that left its residue was your statement that came via email to me was that masks are still strongly suggested.
Yes.
Has the pandemic lingered in your building to keep your people safe?
Well, the pandemic hasn't lingered, but we pay really strong attention to it. We have to be very careful because with an acting company of 20-some people, we only have 2 or 3 covers. So if 4 or 5 people get sick at the same time, we have to cancel the show. We can't do our show, and we can't shut down. We have to shut down. And it was so painful and difficult for us to do that during the pandemic. We're taking every step to make sure we don't have to. So part of that is being very stringent with our acting companies, our creative teams, and our staff, testing constantly so that if someone does end up positive, they get pulled out of the mix right away. And so with the audience, we still encourage, you're tightly packed in there, and it's still contagious. So we encourage you to wear a mask, but we don't require it.
The Tony, tell us about what that's all about.
The Tony?
The awards that the theater has gotten.
Oh, yes. Yes, Goodspeed is the first theater in the nation to win 2 Tony Awards. And the Tony, the American Theater Wing, which puts out the Tonys, creates an award for Outstanding Regional Theater. So Goodspeed has been presented that award twice. In the 80s and the late 90s. We're ready for a third, I'd say.
I would think so. How about the young person that's looking high school, college, and would like to apprentice with the theater? How do they get involved with you folks?
Again, go to our website and look. But we have programs for interested technical people who want to work behind the scenes in the shops or on the crews or whatever, and we'll teach them because it's part of our mission to develop not just musicals, but to develop artists and theater administrators. So we need those people to come in young, and we'll help them out.
Norma Terrace Theater, we don't talk about that too often in papers, in media at all. How is it doing? Is it still closed?
Yes, it has. It's been closed since the pandemic. But we are planning to open it again in 2023. So we'll make that announcement late next winter.
What happens at the Terrace? What kinds of plays?
The Terrace, we only do musicals, and we only do brand new musicals. So everything there, most everything there is, you'll be the first one to see it. And they can be in rough shape because they're new. They can be in great shape because they've been around, working on off stage. And you never know, but you'll see something exciting and fun there.
Does a play that's successful from the Terrace go to the Goodspeed and potentially go out, or what happens?
Well, potentially go out, yes, absolutely. We've had, in the last 15 years, we've had 3 or 4 of them go to Broadway. The latest one was Cyrano, which actually went off Broadway and then was made into a feature film with Peter Dinklage, and he was nominated for an Oscar for it, but the production started with us. They very rarely do they move from the Terrace to the Goodspeed because we feel like the audience has already seen it, but every now and then there's something that is so popular, so strong, that will move it.
What does the future look like for the Goodspeed? I mean, we are moving into 2023. You have a calendar, 2024, 25. You've got your celebration coming up. How's the future look?
I think it looks optimistic, and that's something we weren't able to say for a while, but this year we've done really well. Next year we'll continue. We're not fully back to normal yet. We still have to reopen the Terrace. We still have to get our season back to its full season. But we're slowly but surely getting there, so we were very optimistic about the future.
Subscriptions, individual tickets, can people get that online? Do they call? What should they do?
So right now, individual tickets for Christmas in Connecticut, you can call the box office, 860-873-8668, or go online at goodspeed.org. Subscriptions are only through the box office right now for next year, and so you'd have to call to order them. And single tickets for next year go on sale next March.
Well, we are starting to run out of time. Any closing thoughts to the viewer that you would like them to know other than the information we shared?
I think a big thank you to all of our members who might be watching for sustaining us. We would not be here today if our members hadn't continued their donations and supported us through the pandemic and once we've reopened. And that it's something we'll never forget. We never took our members for granted, but really now we know their importance. So I think that's the biggest thing. Thanks to all who supported us.
Well, thank you very much for being here. We've run out of time.
It always goes so quickly.
I know. I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for being here. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You've been tuned into Arts and Entertainment. In case you'd like to volunteer on the program, I'd love to have you. Would love to have new people on my team. Please contact me at artsandentertainment@mail.com. Well, I hope you have a super day. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll see you next time.